All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we finished up World War One. We have the whole crazy Russian Revolution going on, and let's see what's happening to Europe in between the wars. So we're going to finish. We're first look at this economically, then politically, and then socially as well in a couple of days span here. So strap in, hold on tight, and let's see what goes down. All right. First of all, in class on Thursday, we're going to read, or we would have read. It depends on when you guys actually do this. Some primary sources to figure out how Germany is right now in terms of some of the problems in Germany. We'll also do some look at hyperinflation as well and some documents with that. But let's focus first on Britain and understand that Germany is not the only place that has economic problems. We talked about in class with the Treaty of Versailles how Germany's going to have issues with paying reparations, trying to rebuild their infrastructure, all that kind of stuff from that dreaded Treaty of Versailles. But Britain has problems too. Number one, they have problems with trade because during the war, a lot of British merchant ships were destroyed by German submarines. They're losing close to 40% of their merchant marine force, including both the sailors and the ships that they worked on. Top it off, too, Britain also has bigger problems with competition. Britain obviously does have a manpower shortage, did have problems with the war, and is rebuilding a bit. But they have competition from both the United States, Japan, as well as South America as well in terms of producing manufactured goods. So that's a problem, right? They have to try to undercut their prices, and they can't do that. Now, the other issue is tariffs. One thing that the British government did to try and protect British industry is impose high tariffs on a lot of British goods. Problem with this is that if you put high tariffs on other people's goods, they're going to put high tariffs on your goods as well. So that meant nobody bought the British goods, and they had troubles. Next, unemployment is a big problem. By 1921, unemployment in Britain is 25%. This is due to a couple of reasons. One, come back from the war, it's not everybody can work. That's an issue. Two, factories need to retool post-World War I, and as part of that, then you're going to have unemployment happen. Part three is that whole issue of tariffs and trade and whatnot. That's a big problem. You know what I mean? And so they have to lay people off, fire people, etc. Now, when people can't work, they can't pay taxes, they can't do all that kind of stuff, and it's a big snowball effect to a recession. The other issue is national debt. Now, Britain could step in and help a lot of people, help businesses, but they had borrowed billions of dollars, okay, from the United States during World War I, especially from United States banks like J.P. Morgan, etc. Problem here. Britain's got to pay it back. The U.S. is not going to be like, oh, hey, here's your money, good luck, and okay, whatever. No, they're supposed to pay these loans back, okay? And so the issue here is how they're going to make that happen when they, have no money coming in. The other issue they have is unrest in Ireland. Now, Ireland and Britain have been divided, okay, for a long time over Irish independence, ever since Britain took Ireland over in the 1400s. So Britain has really controlled it, since at that time. And the national really starts in Ireland during World War I, as we see other nationalist movements take place around Europe. And we had the Easter Rebellion of 1916, where on Easter Sunday, part of the Irish nationalists did a very vocal and physical uprising in Dublin, where they try to overthrow the British soldiers there. And what they formed is something called the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, which is using guerrilla attacks against British troops in Ireland to try and fight for their independence and saying they should be a free country. Now, in 1921, we divide Ireland. So what we do is we have Ireland and we have Northern Ireland. So as part of this whole division process, we say that Southern Ireland, or the southern counties of Ireland, because Ireland is divided into different counties, is going to be an independent country. So Ireland, part of the United Kingdom, but it's still a united place, right? And so Ireland is now an independent country, centered around Dublin, and it's a Catholic country because the majority of Southern Ireland was Catholic. Whereas the northern part here, known as Ulster, this is going to be more Protestant area, and it's going to stay with Britain as Northern Ireland. This is an issue, okay? Because you still have, there are Protestants living in Northern Ireland, Anglicans. You have some Catholics living in Northern Ireland as well. That's where we start seeing a war for a united Ireland to happen. You kind of felt that Britain was kind of splitting Ireland in half. They're taking a lot, especially because Belfast here is a huge shipping industry. It's another reason, economic reason, is that the area of Belfast is where the Titanic is built, by the way. Okay. Is one of the main shipping areas and shipbuilding sites for Ireland, for UK. So they can't let that go either. And so the IRA used a lot of violence in Northern Ireland against British soldiers, against British troops to encourage Britain to unite Ireland. This is still not happening yet today. The IRA does still exist today. It gets more and more violent as we go forward. We'll kind of look at that later on in the next few weeks. But it is a trend we'll see with nationalism. Ireland is something that Britain's dealing with while trying to also deal with their economic problems also. Now, France is also a mess. Let's talk about France, okay? When is France not a mess, right? As we discussed a little bit in class, most of the fighting happened, the worst fighting on the Western Front happened in French territory. And so we're looking at France, all of a sudden now you are sans, French term, right? 10 million acres of farmland, okay? And you have over 20,000 factories that were destroyed through the fighting, whether it be the fighting in villages and towns and whatnot, or the bombing of Paris and the shelling of Paris, the big old Paris gun, those kind of things. Problem, right? So here is the French solution. So you have a lot of people that are out of work, okay, no factories, that kind of stuff. And people are pretty angry and hyped up after the war yet because they need jobs, you know what I mean? And so in order to rebuild, the French are going to take a page of what the U.S. will do in the 30s, and that is create work programs. Now, their work programs were to create a fortification on the French-German border. Now, this is led by a dude named Maginot, hence is now the Maginot Line. I believe Jeff calls it a speed bump, I believe, but we'll get to that later on. And it was meant for two purposes. One, it was going to be a great work program to keep a lot of French people employed and then keep the French people happy. That's one thing. So they're building a series of very strong fortifications interlinked with tunnels and artillery guns and machine guns, all kind of stuff right here on the French-German border. Because, if war happens again, Germany's going to come right through here because that's where the border is. And remember, there are rules to war. We're then going to build weak fortifications over here on the side by Belgium because, they're going to be a neutral country and nothing's going to happen there. Right. Now, these coons are really, really cool. They go down many stories down, made of solid concrete, reinforced concrete. They have big guns and they have trains right between each area to move men and materials and weapons and whatnot. It's a really cool way to do this. You can tour these things today and go check them out if you go travel through France. Now, we'll get into Germany here a little bit too, but Germany's goal, we're obviously being very severely punished, and we'll take a look at this in class as well. But they had problems paying off reparations because in Germany, they had to pay all these bills off to Britain and France, and they weren't having a lot of income because of unemployment, because of other issues set up by the Treaty of Versailles. I mean, they couldn't use their military industry to have people employed, make money, that kind of stuff, so they couldn't get taxes in. They couldn't pay the reparations off. So in order to do this, they just start printing money. They start printing money. Yet they just start running off money left and right. Lots of marks, okay? So it leads to crazy inflation. So inflation is so bad that, would they actually pay their workers 3 times a day? You'd be bringing a whole wheelbarrow load full of Deutschmarks to pay for one loaf of bread. It was honestly better to use the money as blocks for your kids than to go buy them actual blocks. People would actually wallpaper their house with these instead of using wallpaper. You could use it for toilet paper because it was probably worth more that way as well. The money was literally worthless. So this is more problems, okay? Because now you're not making money, you're not working, and your money you are making can't buy you diddly squat because your country printed all kinds of money. Top it off, there's a lot of passive resistance too against the French. In areas that France had occupied post the war, they chose to French people chose to just not work very slowly. That way they could kind of stick it to the French. And eventually the French withdrew from those areas in 1925 and gave them back to Germany. But this is one of those areas that the French were, especially in the Rhine Valley. Now, when it comes to reparations, obviously things get a little heated about stuff. And Richard Dawes, who was an American diplomat, brings in the Dawes Plan. And so he made a plan that would kind of help Germany reduce their payments, kind of put more of a 40-year payment plan, and try to make it more reasonable for Germany to pay these reparations off. And so a lot of this whole thing here came about, trying to make sure we have diplomacy. And so there's really a lot of international strife happening here in Europe. Now, you're supposed to have this League of Nations that is supposed to be there to make sure that no trouble happens. The problem is the League of Nations doesn't have a lot of power. And trying to prepare these wars because, all these big countries that were powerful, Germany, U.S., Russia, were not in the League of Nations. And so you try to have countries that are kind of a little snippy at each other. A lot of times they avoided alliances because of the balanced power, right? and that helped cause World War I. But still, they're kind of a little snippy. Germany is trying to test in the waters what they can do. France testing the waters what they can do. And the question is, how can we still avoid a future war? One of the things they did was something called the Locarno Pact. So Locarno Pact signed in 1920s was an agreement by all these big countries that basically said, listen, war will be our last resort. That's what the Locarno Pact said. War will be our last resort. We promise that if we have a disagreement, okay, our last resort will be war. All right. Okay, going with the Kellogg-Briand Pact as well. The Kellogg-Briand Pact would extend to 62 nations, saying that war should not be a national policy, and war should not be a policy you do. Now, the Kellogg-Briand Pact also did things like lessen what military you can have. It said how big your ships can be, how many tons they can displace, how big their guns can be. They got rid of dreadnoughts, all that kind of stuff, as a way to kind of disarm everybody. So a lot of countries started taking part of the military stuff as part of these agreements to make sure that war is going to be the last option they have. That way they kind of stay with each other's business, focus what they're doing at home, and hopefully there'll be no problems. All right, there are 3 questions we're going to have on here. Actually answer these for me. I'll post these 3 questions on Edpuzzle here. But first off, what any actions actually stop a previous war? So like what any actions we discussed here, what they're doing, if we end here, stop a war kind of stuff. Talking about how the Treaty of Versailles actually changed Europe. And lastly, how I think this will impact Europe going forward. What do you think it's going to do? So please answer those questions for me. In class, we'll talk about John Maynard Keynes later on. Awesome mustache. We'll talk about him in class a little more and look at the different government and politics situations in the 1920s, 30s as well. After this, okay, as we lead towards World War II. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention. I greatly appreciate it. Have a great day.